Are you sure? Are you nervous?
Yeah. Oh, no, I am not. I know, if I was a superstar, yeah, I would be nervous. I'm nobody, so don't worry about it. Yeah, and
Okay,
and we will
I'm
say,
setting.
"Cut, go back."
Hey Shankar, good to see you again. It's been a while.
Hey, good to see you, man.
I think it was maybe half a year or maybe more than that when last time we talked. I think it was on the phone. And also I was on a road trip and I stopped by your place. So that was probably spring of this year, right?
Yeah, I think so. 6 months.
So let's introduce Shankar. Um, so we've been working together in one of big enterprises, healthcare insurance providers, and Shankar was there full time running the quality assurance part of the house, and I was there as a consultant role, focusing on DevOps and all the things around that nature. Just trying to improve everywhere, right, where we could. And we found a good collaboration. We found that we kind of resonate with philosophy we're trying to induce, how to approach problems. And I think we both showed similar level of professionalism. I remember we've been preparing for a hackathon. Do you remember?
Oh yeah,
And I
yeah.
think we've been sitting like almost midnight or something, just because we found out somehow, I don't remember details, but we found out that the setup that were we supposed to run next day for the entire organization, like I don't know, 100 people, were having some configuration issue on our part. Basically, we scripted the entire event, and the technical piece was something was wrong with configuration, and we were sitting down to midnight just trying to find out what was the problem and simulate it and resolve it. And I think we made it work. So that was one example of our collaboration beyond normal working hours, where nobody really expected to do it. You just do it because you have a kind of high bar, and
Tendency
you,
to,
yeah,
yeah, tendency to solve the problem.
tendency to solve problem and do it basically for free, just because you have like internal calling to do your best, right? So yeah, Shankar again, um, been mostly focusing on quality, on testing, make sure product comes out of the line at the best quality possible, and that entails a lot of things. And is that still kind of your realm of where you focus your professional career?
Yeah, I think mostly you got it right. Focus on the quality, but then along with saving time, how do you do it with an automation, right? In collaboration with the DevOps pipeline. That's, I think, it's a biggest piece because that adds most efficiency. And you know the hackathon or everything that you and I work together was mostly part of that.
Where, from the level of your career you are right now, looking back, where do you think the biggest realization were for you along the way? Like what you realized about organizations or building quality in a product, or typical flaws in processes of uh, product in general, where people stumble the most? Anything that you picked up as a kind of common denominator in this space?
I think the biggest area is organization, people, leaders. They tend to overlook the quality, right? And it's always a very important piece of whole software development cycle where quality assurance actually contributes a lot. Um, Based on my experience, my reading through a lot of materials or the experience of people from different organizations, what we've always seen is, not overlooking quality. That's when industries they spend a lot of time building, rebuilding stuff, spending time and money. So I think that's the main focus area, and I've realized that this is really critical piece of a software development, and it's very important for someone like you, me, and all the folks that we work together to make organization realize that quality assurance is a big piece of it, and they have to invest equally as they invest in other sectors like development or your configuration management, chain management, or infrastructures and stuff like that.
How do you, Shankar, find language to distill this idea to leadership so they actually get alignment with you, get the buy-in into this idea that quality is not afterthought, it is actually a big part of making the product successful?
It takes it takes a lot of convincing. Trust me, there is no straightforward language. Um, I guess the other thing that I've been most fond of is data collection, and people in the higher management they only understand data or the graph, right? So get the data, put this data together, and then show them the efficiency line going down because bad quality is going up. I think representing a data in some way or a form that leaders understand, it's very important. So I guess that's what I've learned in last 5 or 7 years. Get the data, put the data out there, talk to your leaders, tell them how quality assurance can contribute in adding an efficiency, speed to the market, and stuff like that. So
I'd like to add to your response, which I fully agree, is
mhm,
once you get the data, for example, in quality assurance field, it would be things like how many bugs discovered in-house, how many bugs reported by end users, how many crashes you get, how many downloads you get, and how that trending over time. But specifically, I guess, for bugs and how much time organization spends in testing, whether manual, automation, and even that's where the promise comes as well, where automation is not stable and you spend time
mhm.
fixing it over and over again. If you can multiply those human hours by the rate, by the salary rate, how much they get paid, that accounts for millions of dollars. And all of a sudden, you have a good case on spending a lot of focus on resolving these issues. So those dollars actually go towards features and users rather than spent. Basically, I won't say wasted because there is always some bugs, but if you can convince that those numbers could have been lower for
Mhm.
good reasons, I think that's gonna resonate really well because they think
Yeah,
profits, they think shareholder value, they think revenue. And if you say, well, our numbers, how much we spend on development pipeline are high because our quality is low.
yeah, that's true. Um, yeah, and then I think you hit this point right on the spot, right? So you really need to make sure. Yeah, I should have given some example. Um, I was like, okay, very very high level,
We
like
still have
you
time. We're
understood.
not in a
Yeah,
rush.
no,
I
yeah, of course, I
remember. I
know.
remember speaking to your point of view with regards to that. I remember you brought some stats working together where you said something along the lines like, we discovered that 90% of bugs are driven by misconfiguration or issues with configuration or typos in configuration files. Do you recall that?
Oh yeah, yeah. So I did this experiment and the data collection in one of the I think it was not a development environment, it was an integration environment, right? So yeah, most of the issues, I think it's almost 90% of the issues that were found was all these configuration issues. And that was a, huge plus for, I guess, the initiative that you and I worked together was to push forward on why DevOps and the configuration, automation and the configuration automation is really important, right? So, as soon as you get the DevOps pipeline set up and no manual human configurations are needed anymore, you could, save 90% of your time, or, not have these environments go down all the time. It's just because of the configuration issues. So that was really good case study. Um, and then, yeah, that was actually a game changer for the company.
Yeah, that really helps them to relate to our level of understanding. And I would like to add a bit depth to this topic, because what type of configuration we're talking about? We can have application configuration itself, we can have environment configuration, we can have tools configuration, we can have test data, for example, or some sort of behind the scene data configuration. And it is kind of common sense for most of people that code for products should be source controlled, right? But it's not so much common for people that environment configs should be source controlled, that automation should be source controlled, uh, and so forth. Database config should be source controlled, and changes to those should go through typical uh, testing, code review, approvals, and things like that, rather than there is a team of highly thought about themselves individuals thinking they can just SSH into bugs, change something, exit, and things gonna be always fine. And it's always the case. It's not fine, right?
Yeah, I'm a big opponent of people SSHing into the box and making it changes, even if it's like, you know, a really simple table update, or you update a data, or minor configuration, right? Even if you want to turn off the debug mode, don't do it. Make sure everything is version controlled and goes through a pipeline. That's a way of saving time. So yeah.
I think people don't realize is that it's not about the necessarily complexity of what you're working with. It's about you being a human, and human gonna forget. Even simple
Mhm,
things like what you mentioned, true or false type of flags.
mhm,
You might think in the background of your head, like, oh yeah, don't forget to set this to true or this to false by the time you're done, when you're
mhm.
done with your changes. And you forget. And that's the reason why we do all these checks and balances, because we know we're humans, we know we make mistakes, we need to stop those, even though
Yeah.
they're not difficult to implement.
And adding to that point, right? A lot of people take this. I mean, what we are just discussing right now is a process discussion, right? So people take it as an overhead, time killer. I could just update a flag in 30 seconds, but then think about building this entire application, going through the code scan, and then source control this stuff, and then testing, and then promote to the different environment, right? It's going to take, I don't know, depend on how big and what kind of application and environment or infrastructure you have. It's going to take some time, but as you said, you have it committed somewhere, it's right there. You don't really need to depend on somebody, making sure they remember the stuff. Yeah, so it's always good.
And when things like that are source control, you also eliminate this typical situation where folks are kept at the roles, not because they're high performer, but because they know how things work and it's in their head. So like uh, they've been with this specific environment or product for, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 years. And if you fire
Mhm.
them, There's nobody else who knows how it works. So you de facto have to keep them just to keep the product running. If it's source control, it doesn't really matter who's steering the car, right?
True. And source control in the right way. Code review is very important, right? Someone needs to make sure that people understand it, or it's written in a way it can be understood, it can be tested. There should not be unnecessary complexity introduced in any way.
I recall vividly situation where folks from DevOps team, and they call themselves DevOps, but realistically they're like tools team, or they just set up
Mhm.
environments for teams. So not specifically, not what I would describe as DevOps. And I would recall how they set up permissions for repos, where they would give themselves godlike privileges for anything, and
Yeah.
they would restrict most of it for regular engineers. And I would ask myself a question, or straight up ask them question, like, what makes you think you're not gonna make mistake?
Hmm. True. Yeah. And then um, we had some processes set up around it, right? You go through a certain branching, merging strategy, and like why
Checks and
would
balances,
you?
right?
Yeah, why would you get superpower to do whatever you want? And yeah, I think a lot of organizations are getting matured now. I mean, it's been what, like, at least for my personal experience, last 7 years, I've seen companies going from 100% manual, like, hey, I wrote a code change for this problem. What do you want me to do? I'll give you a package. Where do you want me to drop a package to fully set up pipeline, right? Um, Here's my bug checked in. My pull request is going on, and then once my changes are merged, things will be ready, and you take the version wherever you want. So I've seen that. It really adds up in the speed, but then I think coming back to the quality, right? So it really helps out with the quality, maintains things. You would know who is doing what. You could look at the repositories. You could monitor the changes. It brings a different kind of standard for the quality assurance team.
What is your take on whether something like manual testing should still exist in modern life?
There are certain things can only be tested manually, right? It can exist, and I think it should exist, but it should exist only for the things that has no way to automate, or it doesn't make sense to automate. Sometimes your automation could be really, really expensive and time consuming, and it brings in a huge complexity, right? You just don't want to push a button because you want to push a button, and you have to set up so many things in the background, right? So in such scenarios, I think we should still go manual. I always do the math. Look at the efficiency, right? Like how much money you're going to spend to do a job manually versus automation. But wherever it feels like things can be automated, really simple, repetitive jobs, I think our focus should still be automation. What do you
I
think?
like I like the idea of persistence with manual testing. I would even maybe rephrase it. In some ways, we can say it's not really testing; it's exploration, right? So you get, especially at early stages of product
Mm-hmm.
development, like you have first version coming down the line. You take it that snapshot and you start play with it. You start to and it's great if you do not have requirements in front of you. Just really exploratory
Mm-hmm.
testing. My favorite things about manual testing is exploratory testing, where you really trying to assess what is it in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great if you do not look at the requirements or feature set entirely. You just like play with it as if it just given to you by stranger on the street. So you play
Mm-hmm.
with it and you notice things when fonts are certain way, or how double tap works, or if you change landscape to vertical, and then you start making notes, and you note to yourself whether you believe this is user-friendly behavior, whether it works as it probably should or could have. And then once you have this list, then you come to your developer team, your folks who have idea for a feature, and ask them question. Hey, I noticed these things, like 10, 20, 30 different things. Is this the behavior you were expecting designing this thing? So this allows you to come without any bias. And on top of that, you can utilize some sort of automation tools to generate like random sets of data that you can input to application to see how it's going to react. Let's say you're testing bugs for inputs of like text field or something. You can test like, hey, letters, capitalized, non-capitalized, digits, special signs, mix of those, different keyboards, emojis, and different like things. And you might even create snippet scripts that would generate it for you, so you don't have to. I would test like the character length and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But for something that you've tested before, and maybe also validation of requirements that your business wants to be in the product, and you can automate those, then those should not be your manual burden, unless what you described, which I agree, which is if automating is going to take more time and it's going to be maybe potentially unstable, then perhaps it is easier to spend 5 seconds clicking something rather than automating it for a week.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
Yeah, you brought up a good point, right? You need to make sure what kind of application you are testing too. Like if there is something which is really unstable, it is still being prototyped, and you know something is going to be develop, use, and throw away work. Then yeah, there you go. You focus on the manual testing. I like the way how you define, exploratory testing for something which you're looking at for the first time. But then, yeah, when you know the application is stable, it's been there a while, you are going to test it, very often. Definitely makes sense to automate. I'm a big fan of automation. I like to automate almost anything that is possible, right?
Yep.
And then again, automate in a way that your automated test is not flaky enough, right? Then you would be spending again a lot of time fixing your test. Yeah, which I don't like it. I hate that.
So remember, we spent the bulk of our time when we worked together talking about testing pyramid and UI level test, unit test level, and educating folks to actually try to go on lower levels and forget about UI as much as possible. But I also want to talk about kind of personal experience. When you get to certain number of tests, let's say like 100 tests of UI level, you're almost guaranteed to have flakiness already there, built in. And for those who don't know what flakiness means, is you have false positives, or you have unreliable results. Usually have to do with some sort of spinners, timers, timeouts, network unreliability, where you have negative result that not necessarily should be there otherwise.
Yeah, or bug in your test.
Oh,
right?
that's correct.
Yeah, I've seen this a lot. Like let's say somebody is trying to assert something against the list, and then sometimes there's nothing, and boom, your test keeps failing. So yeah, um, yeah. I mean, that's a big issue, and I don't know if you remember this. A lot of test engineers we worked with, they had an automated test which works in their machine that doesn't work in the pipeline, or it's not ready. I don't know, for some reason. So first rule of thumb, if you have an automated test, make sure you plug it into your pipeline and start executing from a pipeline, not from your local machine.
Yeah, I think
Um,
developing automated tests, it's actually a skill on its own, because ideally you want to simulate your testing of the test locally so you can make it fail, and then you turn it back to positive condition, and then you know it's actually validated, so that we don't have a situation when you write your test, you submit it, it's approved, it's in the pipeline,
mm,
but you never actually tested whether that test is testing or effectively testing something.
true.
Switching gears, Shankar, like drastically shifting gears.
Let's do
How
it.
are you ready? How would you
Yeah.
define success, man?
Success. If you had asked me 2 years ago, before COVID, I would have given a different answer.
Okay,
So this
let's
is
do
my
version A and B. What was the answer back then?
now here. Wait, let me answer this first. So now, currently, right, for me, success is being happy, doing what makes you happy. I know everyone says that. Everybody knows this. But what I really mean it. If something doesn't make you happy, don't do it. And make sure your family is happy. Personally, I like to keep my life really, really simple. I don't want a lot of complex things around me. So in short form, success is being happy in life, being happy around your friends and family or the people you love, leave a good memory, create the good memories. Yeah, that's a new definition of success in my life. Before COVID, since you asked me that, I would have said, do best on what you're doing and try to make an impact. I would still say, yes, go ahead and try to make an impact, make a big impact, but make sure first thing is, happiness, you know, be nice with people you love, create good memories. What do you think? What is the definition of success for you?
Yeah, I think as you pointed out, I think that is a dynamic definition. It changes over life. Early
Mm,
on, I think you aggressive, you want to pursue something. Not all of us, but some of us want to achieve something, have some milestones, or learn something that they find useful or beneficial, and foundationally take care of your basic needs, right?
mm,
um, Once that is established, then you start thinking on the next level is like, okay, what I want to do, what I would love to do, where I want to be, and things like
mm,
that. But that's more like enjoying life, I guess, aspect. What is success really? I guess it's combination of day to I I call it sometimes, and not only for this case, I call sometimes compound effect. How can I compound happiness, for example? So if we think about life as a sequence of days, if most of days are pleasant and I can replicate it, then I have a lot of pleasantness in my life,
mm,
right? Or we can translate it to also interaction with people. If I have mostly pleasant interactions, so it's out of 10 people that are close in my circle, 9 out of 10 give me really positive vibes. Okay,
mm,
that's also compounds every day and so forth. So I think it's about setting up that benchmark of compounding in really positive and enjoyable way, so that once you keep living life, it compounds to big enjoyment and satisfaction. I also read books on this topic, and seems like from research of those people, happiness is a combination of uh, life work of some sort of project that drives you, some meaningful project, and a partner in life that truly is your second half, your life partner, your joy, and so forth.
Mhm.
So I think my answer is along those lines.
Okay. I mean, your answer was really complex. It can be a separate episode just to discuss on that last 2 minutes. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Everything adds up. Everything adds up. Everything defines a lot of things that you do and want, and how you do and how you want definitely defines a success.
I was talking with a friend of mine, and it's just basic example. He invested in pretty good setup for the telework. Right, we during COVID we had a need to interact online, so he's like, okay, I'm gonna get good camera, decent light, and this and that. And most of the folks in his organization would not even turn on camera, not to say it would be
Hmm.
decent quality. And same goes with microphones. It's either built in or like you can hear clearly how they touch on their clothes or something. And it's like,
Hmm.
come on, this is such a basic thing. Okay, it might to have to invest maybe like $100.
Hmm.
But think about it, every day, 5, 10 meetings a day for the course of
Hmm.
2 years, you're gonna be having either good quality or decent quality of sound, video, and enjoyable conversation, or not. And that's gonna also impact not a single individual, but as many people on a call that you have. So think
Hmm.
about your impact on that many people ongoing for years. And we could have been able to fix it with just $100 investment.
Yeah, I know, but again, it's it's a I think that goes to a personal preference and personal interest, right? Maybe your friend who talked about it is particular about, hey, you know what? I'm a geek. I like microphones. I like the desk setups and stuff like that. I think it's a personal preference. I have some folks who don't really care. They are outside, sitting in a windy environment and still attending a meeting. Um, but yeah, I mean, I like the idea. I think I'm going to go invest $100 for the better experience. But that's definitely a good idea. And again, see, look at this. Right? I have such test, and that just what you just said changed me because I like this stuff. But then a lot of people would just ignore it because it might not be a priority for them. Going back to the success, right? So somebody, I won't bring up his name, but then somebody who has been contributing a lot and made an impact in a national and international level in some sort of social service asked me this question last week. I'm an immigrant, so he called me and he said, hey, how do you define a success? Do you
Mm-hmm.
consider your life as a successful? And think about it, the guy who is asking me is already like you know very successful social worker, very popular all over the country and internationally too. I gave him the same answer. My answer was, I don't really care about. I'm not a public person, right? I don't. I'm not a public person. I don't have any interest in being public. But my definition of success was still the same. Be nice people around you.
I wanted to talk a bit deeper about how you were able to achieve that success with regards to your close circle, right? So, talking about your spouse, your kids, your relatives, how did you achieve it? Maybe you have, maybe it happened consciously or subconsciously, where you be proactive about it, or it just happened and you've been lucky. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, I think first thing is maybe it's built in, right? I was built that way. I'm pretty sure I didn't work hard on making things work around me. Um, a lot of things might just be built in, but then certain things that we could do is, be honest, right? Be honest, be nice with everyone. And if you want to be happy, don't expect anything. There should be a zero expectation. Just do your part, right? And then it goes with your family, spouse. Honesty is definitely the first thing, right? Be honest. And yeah, I think that's it. Keep your life simple, right? I don't know about all the folks, but most of the people around me don't have these huge, big desires. You could just be nice, call them, and if they need somebody to talk to, just be there. You don't really have to do anything, right? Always be there for everyone. I think that's the key. And lately, I've been able to keep my life really simple. I'm moving away from buying a commodities. Um, I
Buying
mean, I
what,
have
sorry?
my own stuff,
Hmm.
right? Um, just get what you need, not what you want. I guess it's about my age factor too. Getting older, so what needs to be done. Um, yeah, I guess that, and I got lucky probably.
So, because the reason I ask you this question, because
Mhm.
I've seen you in your home setting multiple times, and I just see how you and your spouse have like this love relationship, respect, and you enjoy being next to one another, and you seems to be really like partners in everything that you do. Uh, so I was thinking maybe asking you around those lines whether there is any secret that you found for yourself to achieve this, or whether you think it just happened and you was lucky.
I'm pretty sure we got lucky. We both got lucky first, right, to be able to find each other. But definitely there is some work that she and I put together, right? So we're nice, we are honest, we are a real friend. We share everything. We do stuff together. We have common interest. And as you said, right? So I think most of very important thing is respect each other. It's very important. And love follows you, happiness follows you. um yeah.
I remember you said something like you're very selective who you bring home, like not many people being at your place.
Oh,
Remember?
yeah.
So, and I was thinking about it, not because of that episode,
Mhm.
but in generally about this idea of protecting, I call it couples bubble, right? So you have this
Mhm.
personal life, and my instinct is protect it from the outside impact, whether it's economy or people or incidents or any kind of mass media bullshit and so forth, maybe negative
Mhm.
impacts from relatives and so forth. So I would like to identify in my life those potential and actual negative impacts and just take, how you say, separate myself from those or create barriers so those don't impact me as much or my personal life. How about you? Do you have something of that nature?
Like, you mean, do I have a list of people who I don't bring them closer?
Blacklist, yeah.
Yeah, no, 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 no. I don't think so. So, man, okay. Wait. So first thing is a friend of mine told me this, like, when I was in high school. Very good friend of mine. He was a really good friend of mine, but then he was like a ghost.
Ghost?
So yeah, I didn't know where he lived. I didn't know who was in his family, and I didn't even knew which part of the city he lived. But he was a very close friend of mine. Again, I don't know, now don't ask me a definition of very close friend of mine. Okay, so yeah, he's the one who I learned this thing from, right? So, and I don't know if people will agree to this. So sometimes, based on his definition and what I've unconsciously followed all my life, now I don't think about it. It just built into me now. It's been like so many years, right? So, so basically the reason to, put or keep people a bit away from your personal life is there's, you know, two different part of our life. One is we as a personal people with our personal families and our close personal friends and families, that kind of relationship. And then we have a professional circle and the people, or list of people, right?
Acquaintances, right?
Again, yeah. Sometimes it's good, and for both of these kind of people, right? Like who you know personally, professionally. Sometimes it's good for you and for those people not to know a lot about you. So here's the thing: when people knows a lot about somebody, their perspective towards them will change or can change. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So keeping certain people away as much as you can to protect your personal information or your personal lifestyle is always good for you, because now their perspective would, wouldn't change, because now they don't know more about you. They don't know where you live. Think about it. You have a friend, you meet him or her every day, well dressed, nice, drives a nice car, always talks about really nice and clean stuff, and takes you to their apartment and it's all messed up. What do you think? So, your perspective would change, right? I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying, my house is dirty. I'm just saying that it's always good to maintain that distance. Again, my personal stuff.
Okay, so now let's talk about how do you determine which people should or should not get closer to you.
Yeah. I give time to people, you know, I listen to them. You can absorb people, and then you can start rating. I'm not saying it in a mean way, but you can definitely have a sense of the people, right? So when you spend certain time with somebody, you can judge if that person is really nice, right? When you trust them, and if you do start doing this, you will know what I mean by trust. You know, yeah, and then by the over time, when the trust builds up, yeah, sometimes you would know in your first meeting, you spend like half an hour with somebody, you would know
I think
again.
what as you were saying, this idea of trust, and then you said, and then in my view, or how I think about it is, especially if it's a new person, right?
Hmm.
There is a lack of time that you guys spend together. So trust is
Hmm.
very surface level, right? You don't have meaningful amount of time to test a person for a variety of angles. So in those situations, you basically derive in reasonable comfort level whether your mental model of
Hmm.
how that person gonna react in the future for different circumstances, once you feel like your model is kind of solid and then you're
Hmm.
comfortable with it, then you have trust credit. And those
Yeah.
trust credit gonna go up or down as time
Hmm.
progresses.
Yeah, I mean, you defined it well, actually. The model, right? Over time, see, first thing in life is, and I would say this to everyone, be very clear on what you want, what you like, what you don't like, what you are, what you are not. When we understand that, right? Like, then, in matter of 30 minutes or maybe an hour, when you are having a conversation with somebody, you would know based on the language, the selection of the words, or the kind of a topic that people are talking about. You you match with your model and you start rating somebody. And maybe most of the time you would be right. Maybe you would be wrong. That's fine. It's a learning curve, right? Then you get better or over time. And at some point you would know. Again, I think nobody's perfect on doing this. Nobody's perfect on relationship. You keep learning until we die.
So basically, talking about the skill of assessing personality over a period of time, and that literally is a skill because some are good at it, some are bad at it, right?
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
on top of that, so you build that model, who that person is, and then you have your own identity, what you like, dislike, pursue or not pursue, and what matters to you. And then you can make a call whether that mental model for the person is something that you want to explore
Mhm.
and get more time with, or something that you don't want to explore and distance yourself, right?
Yeah. And take time, right? Always take
How,
time. There's
sorry, I keep interrupting you today.
no, go ahead, go ahead. No, I'm just trying to say is like, don't rush in relationship. Don't rush in not only relationship. Don't rush making final decisions about anyone, right?
Give people
Give them
time,
enough
right?
time.